All right, it looks like I am officially live. I'm out there doing Facebook Live for the very first time. So if you're deciding to show up to see if Scotty will bomb on Facebook Live, welcome. It's going to be fun. So I thought I'd start out by sharing a couple little trivia things. Some of you may know this about me, but some of you may know that I married my junior high school sweetheart. In fact, it was her birthday yesterday. I won't tell you how old she is. Not going to go there, but I'll tell you this, we've been married for 38 years and she was not a teenager, so do the math on that. So one of the things that she always says she fell in love with me, I used to have really long hair and now I have no hair at all. So she had to fall in love with some other things, I guess, along the way. So 38 years of marriage, we were junior high school sweethearts, and I used to tell people all the time, I dated her for 4 years before we got married. And I invested so much money in her and birthday and Christmas and movies. No way was I going to let someone move in and marry her. I made a big down payment on her. So I'm very thankful for her, and a big shout out for her birthday yesterday. Another event happened yesterday. Some of you know this about me, some of you don't, especially my Louisiana friends. I've been a New Orleans Saints fan for 50 years. I like a lot of misery, you could say. Yesterday was a pretty miserable day. One of the biggest losses. I just can't even, I'm kind of like Drew Brees. I'm still processing. I'm still in shock. But I went to my first game in 1967 as part of Caroli Elementary School. Dr. Frank Hoffman was our head football coach, and he took a bunch of boys down to Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, and I watched the first game in their first year in 1967, and I've been hooked ever since. So maybe I need to blame that on Dr. Hoffman for all that misery. So just a couple things I thought you might want to know about me. Again, this is Scotty Sanders. I'm coming to you live. And so as we think about, doing this Facebook Live tonight, something that kind of just hit me is always kind of going back and thinking about 2017. And by the way, if you're with me right now, I wish you'd just put a comment so I can know that you're checking it out right now. So let me see. I see my buddy Brad Marchman, Don Carey. Thank you, Don. Reggie Redding, Tim Cole, Colonel Tim Cole, my buddy, mentor and friend. My friend Kevin Lynham, Justin LaBella. My son-in-law feels like he had to join up to hear what his father-in-law has to say. Pastor John Metter. John, thanks for checking it out. Man, Kevin Deering, another First Baptist Euless friend, Ashley Debro. So, again, this is Scotty Sanders. I was saying my wife's birthday yesterday. We were junior high school sweethearts, 38 years. She fell in love with the long hair that I used to have many, many years ago. Big loss yesterday. My Saints, 50 years of love, lost in the last play. I don't think that's ever happened before. I've seen them lose some pretty big games, and it's been pretty bad, but none worse than that. But they had a great year anyway. So again, let's talk about reviewing your 2017. It's always good to kind of go back and say, what were the good things that happened in 2017? Reflect back on the blessings that you had, things that you can be grateful for, the victories, any goals that you hit. And that way you can be thankful and grateful, and then you can build on that for 2018. And then you want to say, hey, what is it I'm asking for in 2018? In fact, many of you have done this. It's something I've done for a number of years. I always try to lean in toward a word that maybe will give me some direction for 2018. And I had really been struggling. By January the 2nd or 3rd, I still hadn't come up with it, but my word came to me, the word risk. I feel like 2018 for me, is a year to take some risk. And that's scary for everybody. I'm kind of a risk taker anyway, but I want to take some big risk in 2018. I really do. And so one of the risks I'm taking is doing Facebook Live, thinking, well, nobody may join me. I may totally bomb it. So far, so good. I haven't messed up entirely. So part of this series of Facebook Lives I want to do, I want to talk about leading well. Some of you know I usually close out my emails on lead well. And that's not so much for the person I'm sending it to, but a lot of times it's for me. Just as a good reminder, am I leading myself well? How well am I leading myself? Am I doing a good job leading myself so that I can someday get to lead others? And so one of the ways that you lead yourself well is how you carry yourself in your attitude. Okay, let's see who else has joined me. So I see my buddy Kevin, our creative director with Quest of the Keys. Again, Tim's with us. Thank you for joining us. And so,
Ashley.
okay, Rosemary, thank you for joining us. Ashley?
The Marchmans asked if the Saints losing is what gave you a bad attitude.
No, I had a little bit of an attitude before that. Thank you for that, Brad. It was some other reasons. Maggie Powell, part of our team, our Quest team in North Carolina. Good to have you on, Maggie, as well. So, and by the way, the producer of my Facebook Live is my daughter, Jenny Labello. You know, it takes a team effort to get me over the top and a lot of family involved in everything we do. I'm always appreciative of Jenny. So she's directing my path here. Lisa Rowland, an incredible children's minister at Bridgeway Church. Lisa, thank you for joining me. So here we go. So why do I have a bad attitude? Now, some of you that know me well, you're like, that just doesn't fit because I'm so big about don't ever have a bad attitude. But let me tell you why I have a bad attitude. I have a bad attitude seeing other people with a bad attitude. It gives me a bad attitude. It's like, can't they get over it? Can't they just bring a good attitude? And that's why I've got a bad attitude. So listen, if you're just joining me, this is Scotty Sanders again. I want you to post that you're with me. I see Laura Parker, Star, formerly Louisiana, moved to Flower Mound. Laura, thanks for joining me. So again, why do I have a bad attitude? Is because seeing other people with a bad attitude gives me a bad attitude. I just have no patience for that at all. So for you out there that are struggling with a bad attitude, or maybe you just want to say, how can I take my attitude to another level? So I want to talk to you about 5 principles that will help you in the way of your attitude. All right, so if you're with me, here's the first one. The first one is this: your attitude is a choice, totally and completely up to you. No one else can control that. No one else can make you have a good or bad attitude. It's totally up to you. Either Brad or Brandy Warden, I notice you're with us as well. Some of my kin folks in Louisiana, thank you for joining us. So first one is choose to have a good attitude. There's been so many surveys done over the years asking executives, CEOs, presidents of companies, what is the number one characteristic you look for before you hire a new employee? And by far the number one is someone with a good attitude and someone that has enthusiasm. So think about that. The number one thing that someone will hire someone for is their attitude, and it is completely and totally your choice. That's the number one thing. So think about it. The thing that you can control is your attitude, and it's totally a choice that you can make. So that's the first one. And so what I've noticed is about people that have a bad attitude, they usually blame it on everybody else. It's somebody else's problem that's caused them to have a bad attitude. You know, it's because of their circumstances, because people around them, their family, or the person they work with. And have you ever heard anybody blame their bed for having a bad attitude? I've heard that one before. It's like, man, I must have got out of the wrong side of the bed. And you know what I say to that person? Listen, go home, get back in bed, get out on the right side of bed, then come back to work. Try that. So the first one is, it's a choice. It's a choice that you make. Now listen again, this is Scotty Sanders. If you're with me right now, I want you to put a comment out there that you're checking this out. I'm sharing with you why I have a bad attitude is because people that have a bad attitude give me a bad attitude. So I'm going to share with you 5 principles about having a great attitude in 2018. So here's the second one. So the first one again is you have a choice. It's totally up to you. The second one is your attitude will determine almost everything in your life. Almost everything in your life is determined on how you see things, how you view things. It's up to you on that. It will determine almost everything in your life. Think about your attitude as being the ceiling for your life. If you have a bad attitude or a poor attitude, you'll have a pretty low ceiling. If you have a great attitude, your ceiling is much higher. It doesn't mean you'll get there, but it gives you a greater opportunity to achieve greater results, be happier, have greater joy in your life. So the first one is you have a choice. The second one, your attitude controls almost everything in your life. A good attitude will allow you to be a multiplier. It's like having a force multiplier. When you have a good attitude, you become a multiplier because you attract better people around you. It's just a matter of fact. I don't know about you. I don't want to be around people that have a bad attitude. When you have a good attitude, you become a multiplier versus a diminisher. A diminisher is someone that will put people down and someone that doesn't attract more people. So your attitude is so important, and it will give you great success. It determines almost everything in your life. And then the third one is this. Well, let me ask you a question. So let me pause for a second. So let me see who else is watching me. Natalie Martinez, thanks for joining. Let me ask you this question. And some of you that have been in my leadership circles, different folks I've worked with, I like to ask this a question. It's pretty simple, but it's quite profound. Would you follow you? Would you follow you? And this is what I want to say to you. If you wouldn't follow you, why would you expect other people to follow you? Just doesn't make any sense. Be the type person, be the type leader, be the type family person that you can even lead your family. Be that type person, and your attitude has a lot to do with that. Your attitude's a choice. Your attitude will determine almost everything else in your life. And here's the third one. By the way, Baron Anderson, thanks for joining, one of my Louisiana guys. So here's the third one. Your attitude impacts your relationships. I kind of hit on that already, but it impacts your relationships. You know, it's been said through the years, about 80% of a person's success is determined by how they get along with people and how well they know people. How well they get along with people and how they know people. They know people's personalities. They know what they like and not like. Your attitude determines a lot in your relationships. If you have good relationships, it has a lot to do with your attitude. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to attract people with you. I mean, you may have run into these kind of folks before, what I call the joy suckers. They just suck the life out of you. It's like every time you're around them, they're complaining about something or somebody. Don't be that person. I'd see now that Mary Sanders, I think that's one of my kin folks. Mary, thanks for joining me as well. Kathy Jones, a great preschool minister at First Baptist Euless. Robert Lane, one of the Monroe folks, thanks for joining me as well. Kim, thanks for joining us. I know I'm kind of straying a little bit here. So again, this is Scotty Sanders. I'm talking to you about why I have a bad attitude. Okay? And I have a bad attitude because I'm tired of seeing people with a bad attitude. So I'm working on sharing with you these 5 principles that will share 5 principles that will change your attitude in 2018 and make you to be more successful. Alan Bell, thanks for joining us. And Debbie, good to have you, and Stephen Kidd as well. A lot of great folks. Thanks for joining my first ever Facebook Live. I'm going to go ahead and refer to it as a non-bomb unless I mess up in the last few minutes. Brad Marchman, you better not pray against me on that. Cheryl, thanks for joining me as well. So I've talked about your attitude's a choice, totally up to you. Second, your attitude almost determines everything in your life, and your attitude is significant when it comes to your relationships, and relationships are the name of the game. Being successful is 80% of relationships. So let me talk to you about a few things on the relationship side. Here's a few things. One, to improve your relationships with your attitude, keep a teachable spirit. No matter how far you've been in life, no matter how much you know, always be teachable. And here's the thing that I've learned through the years. You can learn from everybody. Keep a teachable spirit. Second, have a truly servant's heart. Not a fake servant's heart, but truly be a servant. Be the head servant. Be the person that starts out by serving first. Third, show some empathy. You know, empathy is walking along with people. Not just being sympathetic, but being empathetic. Trying to really identify where a person is and what they're going through in their struggles. And then fourth, truly be caring. Really care about the person. And then the last one there is friendliness. Friendliness. Some of you have heard me tell this story before, but you know, I've been accused over the years. I've worked on this. My kids, my daughter Jenny will tell you this. Dad, sometimes, and I really, when it came to her boyfriends, it was totally intentional. Dad, you can be intimidating. Well, I wanted to do that to run off a lot of those boys for sure. No doubt about that. No doubt about it. But listen, when you hear from your kids and from others, Dad or Scotty or whatever, you can be a little intimidating. Some of you know my youngest brother, Coach Casey Sanders. He and I probably have that in common. I know he can be a little intimidating as well. But, you know, one of the things I've learned is, you know, lighten up just a little bit. My wife even told me a number of years ago that, Scotty, did you know that your looks improved by 50% when you just smile. Well, guess what I started doing a lot more? I started smiling a lot more. You know, I want to have that friendliness. That's in my heart. I want to make sure that it comes out. So that's the third thing, is your attitude impacts your relationship. So let me talk to you about the fourth one. By the way, this is Scotty Sanders, and I'm coming to you Facebook Live for the first time, and I'm sharing with you why I have a bad attitude. And I have a bad attitude because I'm tired of seeing other people with a bad attitude. And by the way, just one little principle about attitude. When I served at a church in Louisiana for many, many years, and I used to have this principle about hiring people. I would never hire anyone with a bad attitude. I just would not do it. And because this was my thought, why would I hire people with a bad attitude when you had hundreds and hundreds that would volunteer to do that completely free? So why pay someone to have a bad attitude? So here's the fourth one. Your attitude will help you handle failure in a different way. Your attitude will help you handle failure in a different way. So let me just share a couple of things with you. Have you ever failed in life? Have you ever failed in life? I know I have. You know, I remember I dropped out of college. That was a failure for me. I dropped out as a freshman. I was 17. Man, I didn't have my act together. I ended up going back 10 years later, got my undergraduate degree, and then I got my master's degree. But man, I consider that to be somewhat of a failure to drop out of college. You know, so that was tough. I can remember as a 28-year-old going back to college as a freshman and hanging out with 17 and 18-year-olds. Like, man, what am I doing? I got 2 young kids working full time, but I didn't make that final for me. It wasn't the end of the road for me. You know, so it was a failure, but I didn't let that define me in any way. I got past that. Okay. And so I failed in some relationships. People that I've worked with, maybe didn't treat them the best, or I didn't supervise them well, or I wasn't a good follower for them. I failed in some relationships, even some family things that I could have done a better job. So that's another thing I'll say to you. So, you know, have you ever failed in any relationships? You know, I know that I have over time. Aren't you glad that failure is not final? It's not. You know, I remember reading John Maxwell's book many years ago called, what was the name of it? Failing Forward. That's the name of it. It's probably one of my favorite, and I don't know, it just maybe struck me at the right time. But when I read that, and I think I've got it written here, the definition he gives for failure. Listen to this. Terrific definition. It says, failure is the opportunity to start over in a much more intelligent way. Don't you love that? Failure is the opportunity to start over in a much more intelligent way. That's a great way to look at it. When you fail, you learn from that. You grow from that. And some of you have heard me say, and others said, pain is a great teacher. So when you do fail, you learn from that and you get better along the way. In fact, I enjoyed that book so much. I remember buying a copy for my daughter, Jenny and Jacob. And I basically wrote a note in there that, hey, listen, your dad has failed many times. He's failed many times. He's made mistakes, but I've learned from those things, and I want to get better. And I want you to know that you're going to fail, but it's not final. Learn from that as well. So I gave that both to them when they were teenagers, and I hope that helped them along the way. You know, probably every couple of days I talk to my dad. He's 83 years old. He still works full-time selling insurance. And I called him the other day, and I said, Dad, how's your day been? He said, well, not a real good day. I had 3 sales appointments, and all 3 were no-shows. I said, man, that's a bummer. He goes, well, that's all right. You get those out of the way, and then you get to make the sales after that. But that's how he looked at that. He looked at that as part of the process. You're going to have some failure to get to success along the way. So let me just kind of recap real quick. I'm talking about why I have a bad attitude is because I'm tired of seeing people with a bad attitude. So I'm sharing 5 principles on how you can improve your attitude in 2018. It's a choice. It almost determines everything in your life. It's key to relationships. And then the fourth one is it gives you a different perspective, if you will, on failure. When you fail, if you have the right attitude, you'll understand it's a learning opportunity. You can grow for that. And then the fifth one, your attitude will give you a positive perspective. Man, that definitely comes into play after yesterday seeing my beloved Saints blow it in the last play of the game. You know, you have to keep it in perspective. In fact, my son, he sent me a text, and he's like, Dad, I know it had to be hard on you, it had to be difficult. And I sent back to him, son, it's just a ball game. Keep it in perspective. You know, maybe you need to think about things in your life to keep things in perspective. And I want to share maybe a little principle here that's helped me through the years. I call it a perspective anchor. Back in 1992, Cindy was diagnosed by a doctor. She was having a lot of health issues then, and she was told by a doctor, and she and I both were, that she was having some heart conditions, and she was told by this doctor that she had cardiomyopathy. And I remember just saying, well, doctor, what do you do for cardiomyopathy? He said, well, basically, you either have a heart transplant or you die from that. And I will never forget those words, probably as long as I live. And I remember thinking to myself, all the things that I thought were a big deal and were a worry at that time, it all of a sudden became no deal at all to me. And so every once in a while, when I get stressed out or I start thinking about this what if or this scenario or whatever, that becomes a perspective anchor as a reminder to me, keep things in perspective. It can always be a lot worse. So that's the fifth one I'd say to you, is to keep things in perspective. Your attitude, keeping that in perspective. So your attitude can give you a positive perspective. All right, so let me go over it with you one more time, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions that you may have. By the way, I see Brad Riley joined me. Good to see you, Brad. So principles on attitude. Your attitude is a choice, totally up to you. Your attitude will determine almost everything you do in life. Your attitude will impact relationships. 80% of being successful is knowing people and getting along with people. Your attitude will help you handle failure in a different way. And then the fifth one, your attitude can give you a positive perspective. Now listen, I try not to have a bad attitude. And the title of this talk was Why I Have a Bad Attitude, partly because I wanted you to check this out. But I'm not going to let people cause me to have a bad attitude. I'm not going to let my circumstances cause me to have a bad attitude. I want you to have a great attitude, that you can have tremendous influence. You can build strong relationships. You can have enthusiasm. You can be an encourager along the way. I noticed Jeff Patterson, thanks for joining us. My cousin Thais, thank you for joining me as well. So let me open it up. I'd love to get any of your thoughts, any of your comments, and we're going to take just a few more minutes and let you just ask away. I'd love to be able to share any additional insights or anything that you found to help you to improve with attitudes. Would love to hear from you as well. So I'm going to let my daughter send those to me along the way. Stan Brandenburg, thanks for joining, Stan. Take a little sip of water. By the way, I'm having this Facebook Live in my world headquarters at my home address. This is my office. Cindy and I both work out of this area. We have a great time together. Gene Foster, good to have you with me as well. So if you've got any questions or any comments, I'll open it up for just a couple more minutes. I plan to have another Facebook Live next Monday night at 8 o'clock as well. I'm still working on the subject matter, but each one of these will be dealing with on helping you and also helping me to lead well. I want this to be a year of 2018 that we take some risk, but we lead ourselves well, and that will allow us to lead others. I see my other daughter in Louisiana, my adopted daughter, Caroline Ernst. Thank you, Caroline, for joining me as well. All right, so Kevin, do you have a question there? All right, let's see what he's got. Maybe a comment. My attitude is improving. I've made nightly journaling about my daily gratitude a top priority. I love that, Kevin, just writing it down. And one of the things that I do that's been very helpful is that at the beginning of every day on my little 3x5 card, I've got a little card like this, and I'll share these concepts with you maybe in one of our upcoming Facebook Lives. But I write the 3 things that I'm grateful for every day. And grateful people have a better attitude. They're more joyful. Pastor John Metter, thanks for that encouraging words. That I'm living that well. Good message. Thank you for that. John Antley's watching. Thanks for joining me, John. Any other comments or questions that you may have? Micah, thank you for joining me as well. All right, Jenny.